Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Pallas. Tonight, I am chatting with Becky Garrison about religious narcissism, a topic that must be addressed. It's always been a problem and must be addressed because of its potential to cause harm. Historically, it's caused destruction and annihilation. So we're going to talk about it tonight. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. I'm looking forward to all of your comments and questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you have a comment or a question. I want to give a huge shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. And if you would like to support me, you can go to sherrypallas.com, and there you will find literally dozens of ways to do so for as little as $3 a month. Thank you in advance. And thank you for welcoming us into your home and joining the conversation. I appreciate you all. Okay, let's meet our guest. Becky Garrison moved to the Pacific Northwest in 2014. She has been covering the region's craft culture and the rise of secular spiritual communities. She's no longer a professional Christian satirist, but she still does pieces pertaining to church Jew abuses. Welcome, Becky. How are you?
Doing just fine. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad to talk to you. I know that there was a bunch of screw-ups on my part. I totally own it. So if some people are showing up thinking that we're going to be talking about cults, we're not. It's been a lot the last couple weeks, months, whatever it is. So thank you for accommodating me, Becky, and that this is so much better of a topic because of the need right now. And we're seeing this systemically across politics, religion, or any place where there's power. So let's start where we should. How would you define narcissism?
In a nutshell, narcissism is a person who lacks empathy and compassion, the ability to care for another person and see life through another person's perspective. It's just totally blank. Now, we all may occasionally, get like that. You get really stressed out. All you can do is think about yourself, or if all of a sudden, just things are just really bad going on. That happens. We all have these instances where you become self-absorbed. The moment I sell a book, I am a pain in the ass for about a week. That happens. You get excited of something. Oh, look, all these good things happen to me. And then someone who has bad things happen to them say, oh, you pain in the butt. But no, this is someone who literally cannot, under any circumstances, you don't exist. Meryl Barco says it's like, she described when she was asked about David Letterman, the person and their mommy are one. They cannot see beyond their own needs. They continue to act. They have the emotional ability of a toddler. They're like, in the end, and it can manifest itself in all different forms. And I think that's what often happens is people look at an overt narcissist, a pure self-centered huckster, like a Tony Robbins type. They think that's narcissism, but it can come in so many different forms. And ultimately, in the end, it is not about you, it is about them. And you're beneficial to the extent that you have a transactional relationship with them and you can give them what they want. The moment you don't give them what they want,
And that's where the abuse and the pain comes in.
Yeah. It's like, you think that, Eddie Izzard is about to start a latest adaptation, which I think would be fantastic, a female version of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And this is where it's so common. People see Dr. Jekyll is amazing. We love to be around Dr. Jekyll. He makes everybody feel good. He gives this charismatic vibe. You just feel you're in their presence and he compliments you and makes you feel good. And most people, we don't compliment people to that extreme. We're not that nice. We're just people. But these guys give you what they can, like, tune in and tell you what you need, and they give it to you. And today
That's where
we're
the
in a world
love
where,
bombing comes in,
right?
right? That's where the
Yes,
love
it's
bombing.
definitely, and we're in such an environment right now where everything is so topsy-turvy. I think COVID, we have not really, I've been writing a lot of pieces for spirituality and health on how I was coping during COVID and all these different coping mechanisms I was doing. And we haven't realized we have a nation I think we have global PTSD
Oh, totally.
from COVID. I mean, I'm talking about the isolation, the social isolation. We lost so much. I lost two of my most important communities during COVID. They just imploded. They don't exist anymore. I am not the only person that lost everything. Some people lost a lot more than what I lost. So when you're in that space, you are so susceptible for someone telling you you're special, you're important, you matter. I can give you what you need. I will give you the new kind of Christianity. I will give you the shinier, brighter thing that you've been seeking for. I have the answers. And when you're so full of questions, it's so easy to glob onto that.
Right.
We've had this going for a while. This is why infomercials always came on at 2 a.m. What kind of person is up at 2 a.m? Somebody who is desperately not. Your life isn't going that great if you're up at 2 a.m. watching late night infomercials.
Right.
So
but I need that pan.
They know that you're susceptible. When you just moved to a new city, you just got a divorce.
Yeah.
After COVID, I know so many people. We don't know where we're going to be financially. We don't know where we're going to be, regardless of who gets elected in the White House. There's a sense of we're screwed. And when that's like that, someone will tell you.
A lot of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is, I would say, situational narcissism, like you addressed in the beginning, and then clinical narcissism. Is that a correct way of saying it?
Yeah, and I think one of the things we get into is we only look at like narcissists from the NPD standpoint, which only impacts about 1 to 3% of the population. As you know, It's very few. But the reason why most narcissists don't fit that definition is clinical narcissist. NPD only applies if your life is being impacted by narcissism. All of a sudden, narcissism got to the point where your life is impacted. You're losing your job because you're losing your kids. You're losing because the only time a narcissist thinks, they always think it's someone else's problem. So the only time they're going to get any kind of counseling and even get this diagnosis is if they're forced into it. They committed a crime and they must go to court-ordered therapy. Their wife is going to leave them, so they agree to try couples counseling. That's the definition. That said, when I was doing my research, I discovered that certain professions attract far more narcissists.
Yeah.
And we've done very limited research on this, mainly because I think the church doesn't want to.
Oh no!
It's like they want to diagnose themselves. But the American Christian Counseling Association did this survey. They found out like 25% of clergy were scored at the extreme narcissistic end of the scale, and that's the point at which it's scary. Because they do have this thing, as called healthy narcissism. Because we all need this. You needed a certain degree of healthy narcissism to believe you could launch a podcast. To think you can do something, you need to have this ability that, man, my shit is great. My shit doesn't stink. I can do this. I got it. You need to have that ability to. I couldn't write a book if I didn't think that I can write a book. So you need that ability to think that you can do something that people say you can't do.
Well, I address the ego extensively in my book, and the ego is at the heart of narcissism. It's a broken ego per se, right? It's a destructive, it's a sick ego. I assert that we should be using our ego to compete in doing good things, and compete and trying to change the world. That would be a healthy ego to say, I think I can do this. But when you are looking for a position of power, whether that be politics or religion, the narcissists are naturally going to go to that, right? Because that is the power. That means the focus is on them. That means they can say, especially in religion, well, God told me, those types of things. So you see that you see them congregate literally to the congregations to feed that narcissism. And that's where we get into spiritual abuse, right?
Oh, yes. And it's also, I think, if we look about why someone is a narcissist, and I think the research seems to have shown that a narcissist it's hard to say, nature versus nurture, but typically a narcissist is someone who's been a golden boy. or golden girl from the get-go, or they've been so deprived that they're going to get back at the world. So you tend to find two extremes, and they're both drawn to ministry. The first one says, all these bad things happen to me, and somehow they think I guess becoming a minister will make it all feel better. Kind of coming from that activist angle of, I want to make all the social injustices that happen to me all right, and I will do it by showing everyone that I am a good person, by becoming a minister. And the other one is just the golden boy, what I saw all the time at divinity school, which is
my mom told me I was the world, so aren't I, right? Is that what it is?
They were never, but that happened to my father. He graduated from high school at 16, college at 19. He entered seminary at 19, wow. Was ordained at 22. Because of the canon laws of North Carolina, he couldn't be ordained a priest who was 25. No one who's 25 is capable of being a full-blown priest. That is just too young. So, and he always was given everything he wanted. So when he first began to get no, that led to him drinking, because that was his only way of coping. A narcissist does not know how to cope with no. Does not know how to cope with rejection.
Right.
And I think that's another defining feature. They can't, and the reason I also mentioned it, because they've had everything, or people that have had nothing, is that someone who's never been given nothing, when they finally get something, they're like, I got to keep it all to myself. I can't give it to anybody else.
And so why can't you?
So we really don't know why some people are. I mean, in my family, I can't tell you why. I can count on one hand the number of my extended family members that are not alcoholics and narcissists. And I can't tell you why we are, except I always had this innate ability in myself that I wanted to take care of others. I was the family enabler, and so the other challenge is, if you're not the narcissist in the group, are you also the enabler? Are you also wanting to be part of the group? You're willing to do everything and everything and everything. And then all of a sudden, when you finally set a boundary and you're shut no, you just sit there reeling, like, what happened? It doesn't feel normal when you are encountering someone with those kinds of energies.
Yeah. Well, and it's all your fault, never theirs, right? So there's a lot of projection, and that's where the abuse comes in. But I think that one of the things that just dawned on me is that, forgive me, but I'm going to use the wolf and sheep, but people mostly go to church because they're hurting, because they need some type of community, because they're looking for answers. And when you have a narcissist there that is sucking up that power, who is sucking up those emotions, that it leaves for not only battered believers, but also ripe for abuse, ripe for people being taken advantage of, great wealth in the pastor. I mean, everything that we see that would be anti-Christ per se, right?
Yeah, and also people tend to associate, I notice in our polarized culture, we tend to say, like there's been a fair amount of work, and I'm kind of impressed on the Church 2 angle. There's been starting to be some awareness. But the mainline and progressives and the emergent type of people, they go, look at that bad Mark Driscoll, without noting the fact that there are progressive counterparts to Mark Driscoll just as well. I'm using him as an example because he's been fairly recent. And every progressive on the planet that I knew, leader, was bashing on Mark Driscoll. Not a single one of them noticed. When I was up there in Seattle, I was actually covering the actual fall of Mars Hill. And I would tell these parishioners, they went to the other Mars Hill, Rob Bell. And I would kind of point out to them, are you aware you're leaving one narcissistic situation for another? Like, oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. He's much better. He's much better. He's much better. And then I would say to them, are you aware that Nadia Bolz-Weber is the progressive cussing pastor meme equivalent of Mark Driscoll? In fact, Mark Driscoll is the one who invented the cussing bad boy pastor back in the 90s. He invented the meme that she then took and liberalized, you might say, and then marketed it. And they go, oh no, she's like, they don't see that you can change the trappings. But the bottom line is, when I was at the Wittenberg door for 1994, till it closed in 2008, almost every best-selling author that I interviewed, or that we interviewed collectively, I would say display signs of strong narcissism. Not all the authors, but most of the ones who were like aiming to be the bestseller. They were aiming to get themselves on the national stage. You could just tell that they possessed this incredible narcissistic streak. And at that time, I didn't know how to identify it. I just thought they were, jerks for Jesus, being hyper assholes, being idiots. And I knew enough to know that I should just keep my distance a little bit.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was with narcissism, because we have to realize this research is very new. This is kind of like, I can remember back in the 80s when I started discovering the recovery movement and alcoholism. And that solved so many answers for me. I mean, the church was invaluable here with the role they were playing. By sponsoring AA meetings, I went to some beautiful spiritual gatherings around alcoholism. And that was considered very new. It was, you never said my parent was an alcoholic. It was just, you didn't say that in 1980. You just did not say that. But to get the freedom where you can just say, my parents are alcoholics. My parents died of alcoholism. Now the component that I'm learning to do is that my parents were alcoholics and also narcissists. And I realized this, in that even if my family, among those few family members, even when they stopped drinking, the abuse wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And that's the key component, is because I also had a spiritual director who was an alcoholic in recovery. And her name was Judith Balmer, and she was an amazing, beautiful soul, because she was a pure example of someone who was an alcoholic and then they got saved, literally. That can happen in an alcohol. So I don't want to say that, because not all alcoholics are narcissists, but if the person stops drinking and the abuse doesn't continues, then that self-centeredness is not due to their drinking. This is who they are. They are not going, because, I've often seen people say, my spouse recovered. I know when he recovers, things will get better. And then they don't.
Right.
That's a sign that you're not married to someone who's really into recovery. He has just replaced one addiction with another.
Well, and I mean, trauma is the gateway drug, right? So, you can get sober on anything, but if you don't heal the trauma, if you don't address the issues that cause you to start drinking and escaping, then that's going to happen anyway. And but the thing that's different with narcissists is that they refuse to accept that they have a problem, right? That's the AA thing, is accept that I have a problem. And that's how you begin to fix it. But a true narcissist will never accept that they have a problem. Like you said, that's why they won't get into therapy.
No, they won't. They may sober up because they're going to lose their job. I mean, they're going to lose their marriage.
A survival, not an intention.
Yeah, and I think that's another very key part to notice about this whole dynamic. And it's also, it comes in a lot of different flavors. Like, I can spot an exhibitionist narcissist. That's not that hard to figure out. They're the ones on the center stage, the best-selling authors. And then you have the more royal narcissists. They're the ones that I tend to find in the country club churches, the ones that are very gated communities. They don't want anybody else around. And then there's the more malignant narcissists. They're the ones that we tend to veer into sociopathy, and they're the ones that might end up in the criminal justice system, because their abuses sometimes do go into sex abuse. They do go into, sometimes the courts will intervene. I mean, a lot of times the courts are not going to intervene. Like, I was just watching the documentary Escaping Twin Flames, and it did look like that was definitely a high controlled situation. It looked like definitely were some abuses going on, but nothing looked criminal as of yet. I'm not saying that something criminal won't come up, but a lot of these, a court is not going to intervene. They're like, you were an idiot for giving that person your money. This wasn't a fraud.
In church. I mean, if it's in church, there's all these protections too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think for a lot of people, what they have to realize, I think when you come to this realization, is that certain people are obvious. The ones that are hard for me to identify with, it took me forever, were the more covert types, the communal narcissist, and especially the victim narcissist. Now, the communal narcissist is the one that I find in almost every progressive gathering. They're talking about the new world we're going to create. We're going to create this new world. We're going to create this new worship service, this new whatever. And then you buy into it because you want to create something new, and you like the spiritual buzz. You like all the spiritual practices. I mean, I still consider myself an apophatic, agnostic Anglican. I love the liturgical practices, and they inform how I meditate. So it's so easy when someone applies into this stuff and says, this is going to be the great way to go, you buy into it. And then you realize this was just designed to serve that one person. This was just designed to put this one person's product on the bestseller list. You were used to help promote this product. And now that you're not needed, bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of, to my disappointment, I must say, a lot of that in the progressive churches, where it is like there's this awakening that, oh my God, I'm part of the deconstruction thing,
Mhm.
but I've seen the light, haven't healed, haven't done the hard work involved with it, haven't done the work to truly look at your place in the matter, and yet they just switch out and go, okay, well, now I'm this progressive pastor doing the same mannerisms, having the same control techniques, but now saying, well, I'm progressive because now I'm LGBTQ affirmative, or now but you women still need to be quiet. I mean, I'm looking at all of these progressive things across the place, and women still aren't even being heard or even allowed to have a voice. And I think that because it's been so prominent, or perhaps I'm just noticing it now, um, it's like, okay, if you're not the person that you were in that church, then why are you still talking? Why don't you sit down and have the people who were who were the victims, who were actually trying to say this is wrong, they're still being talked over, I would say.
Well, I think it's also a lot of going on with the institutional creep. I remember I wrote in 2007, I wrote 3 books. They were discussing new forms of church in the Episcopal Church, some really innovative stuff happening at the ground, involving some women, LGBT people, some people of color, some really exciting dynamic grassroots stuff. In particular, there's some really exciting developments were happening over in the UK, and we were trying to bring them in. And after publishing these 3 books, I kept saying, okay, now let's go discuss bringing other people voices in, other voices. How do we
Right.
build this movement? And the answer was, our customers, meaning the Episcopal churches, they're requesting Diana Butler Bass, Phyllis Tickle, and Nadia Bolz-Weber, and Brian McLaren. We're going to give them that. I'm like, well, yeah, but these guys, I interviewed them all through the door back in 2000. Great interviews in 2000, but nothing has changed, because once you get on your platform, you must keep your platform. You must keep that platform as is, because that's what matters. If you're, it doesn't matter if you do new research. I must present what will sell. I've had several people tell me that it doesn't matter what somebody believes, it matters what they can sell. I mean, that's the nature of things. And meanwhile, the Episcopal Church, by ignoring all these beautiful, innovative voices and supporting all of these spiritual, narcissists, my reaction was, I'm out of here, because I will support the people in the grassroots, but there's no point in trying to push the institutional church to get them to accept change. They're not going to change. Your best bet is just to walk out and leave and find those churches that'll let you play. I've met some individual pastors that are amazing people. I've met some great meditation teachers, some great Buddhist teachers, some Tantra people in ecstatic dance. They're there in small bits. It's just the moment it starts to institutionalize, the moment it starts to coalesce,
Right.
the moment you start thinking, I need to worry about my best-selling book.
Right.
And the church, I mean, this is one thing it was so disappointing with the Episcopal Church, because in the 80s, I was involved in a very, the charismatic movement of the Episcopal Church. And it was beautiful when it was first starting. Just uplifting. It was very embracing. It was very bringing together. And next thing you know, it got into arguments over who's in charge of what, who gets to do what. And
Sure. As soon as someone needs the power, that's when corruption comes in. Every time, in every segment of society.
And it's also, in the case of the charismatic movement, there's also some degrees of, one of the male leaders got accused of sex abuse with multiple men, and then different things started happening. And it also took a hard turn to the political right. So I've seen my share of, like, when the U.S. Emergent Church started happening, I got connected to it through the UK stream. And this was beautiful. Nobody was going to churches in the UK. So they were saying, giving a lot of freedom and flexibility for what people could do. And this was so dynamic to watch. And I was so excited to bring this over to the U.S., only to find the U.S. Episcopal Church going, that's not how we do it in the Episcopal Church. And also the Episcopal Church suddenly, because they're getting desperate, started turning to leaders. They started, instead of, in the past, they would have looked at someone like a Nadia Bolz-Weber and said, this is a walking joke. This is a goof. This is, what are you doing here? But instead, yeah, let's bring her in because she'll bring in the audience. She'll bring in the bucks. The moment you start saying, I need to bring someone in because that's how I'm going to make money, you're not thinking, what is the best food for my spiritual congregation to eat?
Right.
What should I be feeding them?
Right.
And, it's like when I was working with Sojourners, they would host all these poverty conferences that cost more money than anybody who's actually in poverty could afford to attend. And in Trinity Church Wall Street, we do the same thing. They host these conferences. We're going to help this population. Well, that population was never invited to the table. We're going to discuss what we're going to do for them.
Right. Patrick is saying, when I went to an Episcopal youth group, we had several charismatic outpourings of the Holy Spirit that in hindsight seems to have been shut down by high church traditionalists.
Yet charismatic churches, the charismatic service was never fully accepted by the mainline Episcopal churches. But that's, an example where somebody wants to do something innovative, just bringing people in. And all of a sudden the church goes, nope, can't do it. I mean, I know, but I've also seen churches where they have let this happen. I started going to St. Mark's Church in the Bowery, led by a worship leader friend of mine, Janine Otis, who she was a backup singer with Kool and the Gang, and was very involved with the Lift Your Voice hymnal. She has thrown a Good Friday blues service that just blows you out of the water. And her music brings people together. I describe this church as a priest and prostitutes church, meaning you'll find everybody there. I mean to say sex worker. I was kind of a slang to say that. I apologize if that was not the right term, but it was just you see a bunch of people there gather around the table, and you don't know who they are except they're children of God. You don't really know, is that person sweating because he just got done with a walk and a run, or is that person sweating because they're afraid the cops are going to catch him, or is that person sweating because they had a hard night running second graveyard shift? You don't know why they're sweating, but they're in there in church getting communion, and everybody is welcome. And
years ago, I went to the same church that spawned my book, actually, and I went to the singles group, and I sat down, and this woman leaned over and said, if you really want friends in this place or to be accepted, you really shouldn't smoke. I mean, like, as soon as I walked in, it was like, well, aren't we welcoming? To which I responded with, my mom's best friend used to say, smoking doesn't send you to hell, it just makes you smell like you've been there. But anytime you walk into an environment that's not welcoming, it's just gross. And that's why so many people are leaving. You can't have these power structures that are telling you to deny who you are or to live according to their standards as opposed to your morals and integrity. I think at a 10,000 foot view, it's still the fight between Jesus and the Pharisees. It's Jesus, was the servant and said we must be servants, and the Pharisees said no, we want the power. And I think that when we're looking at narcissism and religion, that's the crux, right? Is we still 2,200 years later have these people in religious power wanting to maintain that power and judge all of us mere mortals. When Jesus said, no, we're all welcome and judge not, and power sucks and all of those things. It just drives me crazy that in 2,000 years, we're still struggling with this.
But not only that, but I know that there's been some theories in Eastern Orthodoxy that Mary Magdalene may in fact have been much more than just Jesus's companion. But we tend to whitewater the fact that the Bible chose to have Jesus, the resurrection, first appear by a woman.
Yep.
We forget that basic reality.
We don't. We don't forget it. The patriarchy just denies it.
When I say we, I meant the royal we, meaning.
Yeah.
And I think, you look back, but whenever the church has been in a state of crisis, I've noticed that that's when they tend to let very interesting things can crack open. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, not within the institutional church. I mean, I think we're undergoing something as serious as when we left the feudal system for the city-state system during the Reformation. We are undergoing a huge transformational shift. This current generation of kids, they're not as vacuous as I was when we were growing up. I mean, I
No.
was thought of as a weirdo for wanting to do social justice work. Everybody else in my, college, like, you don't want to get married, you don't want to have kids, you don't want to make money. I was like, no, I want to see what I can do to do good in the world. It took me a while to realize that when I was 32, I realized the way you're going to do good in the world is through writing. You're going to tell stories.
Right.
That's what you're going to do. It took me a while to figure out how I was going to do it, but that's what I wanted to do. And that was considered weird. Now, when kids say they want to make a difference in the world, they're not looked at as weird. It's considered, hey, you're right. Let's discuss different ways you can make this happen. So this is where I'm finding a positive sign. They're leaving religion, but they're not leaving a spirituality behind. They want to care for the planet. They may be despondent about this election. I mean, because they feel that they have no choice. So they're going to focus on where they feel they can make a good difference. They can make a difference in the world. And I'm seeing that happening among the younger people. And that gives me considerable hope for them.
So much
but
joy.
I think, so that's, I continue to remain helpful. What is concerning me is I'm starting to notice the rise when people exit Christianity, as I noted with the Mars Hills example. Have you done the work? Have you addressed your trauma? Because too often I see Christians going into an ecstatic dancer community, a Tantra community, especially with Tantra and Buddhism, because those are both that's where you start to get in touch with the core of who you are. You start to be in a safe space and release your body spiritually and possibly even, sensually. So in those cases, they are really getting harmed by being with a guru who is more predatory than pastoral, as I say. So it's absolutely key. I mean, for me, I never thought that EMDR, for me, that was the trick that did it. But I think for other people, what are you doing to help heal that little gut in your feeling? Because I could walk away from a situation, but I would still have that gnawing gut in my feeling. And I would feel guilty as hell. I would feel all these feelings, and I just don't feel them anymore. I can leave a room. Can you get rid of the FOMO that you feel? Because you're going to feel FOMO. You're going to miss that cool church, that cool youth group, that cool young adult group, that place that you were making social connections. Even though they were superficial, you were making those connections.
But I mean, it's the same that we said earlier with a narcissistic alcoholic. If you, as a parishioner, are looking to be led, if you, as a parishioner or believer, are looking to be told what to believe, then you're still going to blame the church for you being misled. There needs to be some type of ownership. I mean, there was a lot of, for me, feeling stupid. There was a lot of embarrassment. How could I have believed these things? So I'm not saying that I wasn't the victim and that I'm blaming the victim, but I also needed to heal from that. I needed to put everything into perspective and say, okay, this is where, I was a child, did these things, but if I continue to look for those types of things, that poses the problem for me. So I think when someone leaves the church because they're seeing all of these bad things, but then still doesn't think for themselves and still doesn't figure out what they need, that's when the abuse continues in different forms. And especially in religions. I mean, it's now become a personal joke of mine about how all the religions, especially the Eastern religions, believe that men are the ultimate incarnation. And so, it's a joke with me now, like, oh, but they're the ultimate incarnation, because women need to reincarnate again because we bleed and all of this really patriarchal bullshit. But, if you are still buying into the patriarchy, if you're still buying into that women must be submissive, or that you're supposed to, follow some human on earth because they said God talks to them, there's internal issues that need to be adjusted with also.
Oh yeah, and especially when I notice in the ex-Christian setting, when they exit, women in particular are very susceptible, because I've seen, a lot of women. I'm not saying men don't get it too, but I've just been talking more with women about this topic. Is when they leave the church, and they kind of say a tantra guru or someone involving in the area of sacred sexuality. And he's like, I can heal you from all the wounds the church did, because the church gave you some very negative teachings about your body. And if you haven't internalized that yourself, it's such a risk. for
Right.
a guru to say, let me show you
And
how to be a
narcissism
woman.
again. No one, the only person that's going to save you is you.
And that to me was amazing. But I also want to give everybody a lot of grace, because like when I first moved to Portland, I had studied. I'm walking away from professional Christianity. I know I was very healthy with doing this. I found some communities where I could play. I was content with. Let me just look and see what's happening with this world of secular spirituality. And I connected with a mindfulness teacher who later proved to be a sociopath. And this is a mindfulness teacher who was a trauma specialist. And I was later learning he was using EMDR on his dates. He was not I'm saying if I could fall, but I just moved to Portland, and it took me a while to forgive myself. You just moved to Portland. You did not know a lot of people. You wanted someone to go out with, personally and professionally. This would have been a good mix in theory. MDiv MSW, writing articles, was a licensed trauma therapist. Oh wow, that sounds great in theory. So just I convey that story to give people a little bit of for yourself. Like, just give yourself grace. Look at yourself where you were probably in a new situation. You just lost your job. Whatever happened that put you in that vulnerable situation that made you more susceptible than you might have been. And this is for people that, you've done a fair amount of work, but you can still be hooked in by this.
Well, one of the things that my mentor, Michelle Zaveco, really taught me, of the many, is that we see others the way we see ourselves. So I am able to give myself a lot of grace, especially in the last couple years. People who have said it degradingly, oh, you only see the best in people, you're a fool, or those types of things, right? And instead, because, whenever I compliment Michelle, she says, you only see that because of the way that you are. So when we believe that these people are in our best interests and we're not being blinded, but we are being conned, it's easy to give yourself grace to go, okay, well, because I'm a good person, then that's why I assumed that they were a good person. I was wrong, but that doesn't mean that I'm still not a good person. When you want to believe the best in people, that's when, if they are a narcissist, that's when the abuse can take place. It can also bring you to close friends. There's just needs to be some discernment, and almost like a checklist of, did they do this? Did they do that? Watch for the red flags. Make sure that it's not about them. It's about the community, the greater good.
And I had this relationship in 2015, and the body keeps the score did not come out to 2016. And so part of giving myself grace is the material wasn't there. It was sort of like I had to forgive a lot of people for the fact that my parents died in the late 70s. And I would keep saying, why didn't anybody see this? Why did they do anything? Well, there weren't the tools until Betty Ford came forth and began the whole recovery movement. So in this sense, there wasn't the tool for me to recognize that this person was a narcissist. He wasn't drinking to excess, and I was already eliminating anybody that drank too much. I was very good at spotting the signs someone had a drinking problem. And I saw a few self-centered red flags, but I said, nobody's perfect. I'll work around it, And it wasn't until the relationship ended and all of a sudden everything imploded, where his full Mr. Hyde came out. And then all of a sudden, from then, I began piecing the pieces back together. And it helped me that I went to a narcissistic support group for about 6 months. I didn't need more than that, but I needed to hear stories from other people that made me realize, yeah, that's what they do. And to get techniques and to learn how to go gray rock, to learn how to that's a process where you treat someone just like a rock. You don't give them the fuel they need. And the moment you do that, it's a bit hard, because at first they'll walk away because you didn't feed them.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss that warm, charismatic Dr. Jekyll buzz. You're going to miss it. And it's honest. Just admit you're going to miss it, because I missed it. But then I don't get the Mr. Hyde blowback either. So you kind of say to yourself, the more I did it, it was easy. And now I'm like, so-and-so didn't invite me. I mean, I still can get a little bit sad if all of a sudden the mean girls don't invite me to something. There's times you're human. Just
You're not
say,
a rock.
yeah, and there's times I'm
Yeah,
not a rock, even though I act like a rock, but there's times, but because of EMDR, I don't get triggered. I mean, I
yeah,
did have an instance recently where some women were very obnoxious and nasty by not inviting me to certain, wine events that as an industry person who covers that, I should have been invited. But I realized they were just mean girls. Okay, so I'm not going to play it with mean girls. I'll go play with fun people that want to be with me. In the past, I would have obsessed over why am I not being included. And I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah, that's a pain in the butt. So it's not, you don't play Pollyanna. You can acknowledge your feelings. Yeah, I'm bummed I wasn't included. Yes, I'd love to go visit certain
I
people.
look at it, and it the last 6 years have really shoved this in my face. In fact, I was just thinking about it today, how different everything was. I used to have like 5 different groups of friends,
Mhm.
uh, dozens and dozens of friends. And then I got cancer, and things started spiraling in my life, and poof, they were all gone, all of them. And I was so devastated for so many years and so hurt, um, that these people that I loved and considered to be friends and best friends could just walk away, and really had to question myself as to, what did I do wrong? Am I that bad of a person? Was I not a friend to them? All of the self-examination things. And in the end, I came up with that where I was wrong was thinking that they were friends. They, just changing my language to people that I know, as opposed to adding the friendship aspect to it, takes a lot of the pain away. I mean, the pain still hurts because you thought that they were a friend and it turns out it was just someone that you knew, but it also relinquishes a lot of control too, and shame, because it's just, well,
Mhm.
I thought they were a friend and they weren't. They were a situational person in my life, a bar buddy, a travel buddy,
Mhm.
someone for me to help get through their situations in their life, but not anyone for me. Like you're saying, it was all about them.
And just because someone's a transactional friendship like that does not mean they're a narcissist per se. It just
Correct.
means that they could have been. I've had friends that they were my friend because we were together. I mean, once when I left the world of professional Christian publishing, I mean, most my entire address contact book is now more filled with people that are covering, spiritual narcissism, secular forms of spirituality, beer, wine, cannabis, spirits, cider. It's not Christian religion. I don't cover that. And yes, do I miss all the people that I used to talk with, the email
Of
conversations?
course.
Yes. So you can miss that and you can mourn it, but you're
Right.
not there anymore. Think of them as the boyfriend, the husband. It's almost like a divorce. We don't discuss divorce except in actual divorce cases, but in many ways, you're going through a series of little small divorces.
Yeah.
You are no longer that person. They're no longer that person. You know, let's depart and be friends. The difference is if a person is a narcissist, you can't just do that. They will not let you just, you can't just walk away, because you will walk away. You are the bad person. You immediately, you
And
will
it
be
takes their power
demonized.
away. Yeah.
So it's not a case of, I just found another church I want to attend, or I just don't want to go to church
Yeah.
right now, or I want. A person who is not a narcissist will respect your space. They'll respect your
Right.
decisions. A narcissist cannot handle the fact that you're not going to buy their book anymore, the
Right.
fact that you're not going to support them. And the sooner you can realize that, you realize also, for me, the big thing about it was just removing that icky feeling in my stomach. Because as the enabler, I would feel horrible if I did anything to hurt somebody. And I would try to make them feel better. And I also realized that a lot of my, satire was coming out of my own pain. And now that I've,
Of course.
done work with EMDR, I can still do satire. I mean, but I'm doing satire on the concept of spiritual narcissism from a different vantage point. It doesn't really have the same sting and the same ethos that it once had, where people, it doesn't have the same bitingness. And sometimes my editor would reject material, make me rewrite it because it was just too harsh. I had not healed and I was too angry. And you can't do this work if you're in a state of anger.
Right. I mean, so many people told me, take this out of the book, cut it into 5 pieces. It's too thick. It'll sell more. This is what, the audience needs. This is, and I was, nope, 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 nope. This is for change. This isn't for to make me rich and do all of these things. So in this conversation, I feel better about those decisions because it wasn't towards, that type of thing. But what can we do um, in our own communities to avoid these people? What are the red flags that we should look for if we're in these situations and wondering, are you at a church that is led by a narcissist? Are you in a community group that's led by a narcissist? What are the signs that people can see?
Okay. For one thing, I always recommend people to do is try saying no. Meaning, what happens if you are not present? What happens if you
That's
say to
a good
somebody,
one.
I can't show up for that volunteer meeting, but I can do next week. Just I'm not saying you want to like play games and do testing, but just see, do they want you if you're not physically present?
And is there any retaliation? Is there
Yeah.
any shit talk? Is there, all of those? That's a really good one because you can, if the circumstances around the no, if you're privy to them talking shit or, or even any backlash from it, that's a really good way. I mean, that would have ended so many of my relationships before they even got started. It would have been great.
I mean, and I've done that too. And it's also when there's any form of ask, just out of curiosity, ask follow-up questions of the leaders. Is there an accountability system in place? If you had an issue, let's just say, I mean, a certain priest was being a jerk to you, or you were having a conflict with a volunteer, is there a place where you could go for a resolution? And in fact, one of the problems we have in the Episcopal Church is that the bishop, there's no way right now, it's why I say that joking, the House of Bishops is on fire right now, is there's no way for the bishops to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
So right now we've had an instance, our prior governor, God said governor, it was a Freudian slip. It was a prior bishop of Oregon, did some horrendous things. And I'm not going to elaborate on them. You can Google the Oregonian Bishop Hanley and abuse, and you can read a very small iceberg of what he did, and yet nothing happened. He's collecting a full pension. He retired, no problem. So I think that's, part of the problem is there a way to hold accountability? Like if you say to somebody, this youth minister grabbed my butt, or anything that would be involved like that, where would you go for that?
Okay.
And secondly, when you hear people saying something, how are they treated? I've looked at, like, this is the long-term volunteer. This is somebody who is beloved secretary. And all of a sudden she just says, this rector's an asshole. Well, why would she say that? Now, maybe she is a little bit, unstable. Maybe she is. We don't know. But odds are, why would you say that and risk your job? Why would someone who's been a beloved member, look and see who is saying something is amiss. Look to see who's not at the table.
Trust them.
Who is not at the table? That's a huge one for me. If I see one more video, and I've seen this even in the Episcopal Church, we're going to have a diverse congregation. Wait, that kind of thing. And you're like,
well, no one ever asks how, right? No one says, well, okay, how are you going to diversify your congregation just because you're saying it? I had a boss do that a couple years ago where he was like, we're going to have a diverse company. And I was like, so what are you going to do about that? Are you going to start looking at more people of color? Or are you going to, he just wanted it to happen. And unless you put the work into it, it's not going to happen.
And I also look at the, one way you can tell immediately when you walk into a church, go to the welcome table. That is what they value as their most important thing. This is what they're going to put on all the stuff that they care about. These are the programs they care about. Are there programs that you care about? If their whole ministry is outreach, like we're going to give money to kids in Rwanda, but they have no ministry to help you deal with kids in your own neighborhood. What is going on here? Are there programs, or is everything in reach? That's one of the big things. Is it all designed to make you feel good, but there's no outreach? Conversely, if it's all outreach, but there's no in reach, that tells me the church is not balanced. They're either they want to become the social justice warrior. Look at how virtuous we are. Look at all the ways we protest. Look at all the ways we make a difference in the world. And the other one goes, look at how good we're going to do it promoting you as a spiritual citizen. We're going to build up your own individual spiritual lives. To me, a healthy church has both. They're going to have in-reach and outreach. It's going to be balanced.
And some real reality to it too, right? I mean, because like I was looking for a church to do my book video, and I found one that was perfect. And it was perfect because all on the outside of the church was radical generosity. Doors were locked. They were charging $1,000 a month for their summer program. On their website, they plant flowers 4 times a year. That is their radical generosity. Meanwhile, this is LA. There are 40,000 homeless people, but the radical generosity is planting flowers to make sure that their streets look better. It was like, oh, this place is perfect. This is who I'm assaulting. This is who I'm addressing. Do not post signs of radical generosity when there's homeless people sleeping outside of your gates. Do not say that you are going to help people when it's just to make your neighborhood look prettier. That just grosses me out.
Oh, and another key piece that I just hit me is financial transparency. Does the church have, that's what is the church's books? Can you access the books?
Yeah.
Because, for example, one thing with Mars Hill, they had Mark Driscoll had 4 LLCs, and the church had 2 LLCs. No church needs more. You might want to set up 1 LLC if you want to do like a homeless ministry and you're having problems getting faith-based funding. Right. So sometimes people set up a secular LLC.
But multiple, there's no reason.
And if you can't, because you can't access an LLC without a court order. So ask them if you can't find out where your money's going. Where is the money going for? And then look, are there all these conferences, whatever we're hosting, what actually happens other than people feel good? One of the things I've noticed with all these emergent conferences, everybody talks about deconstructing. They talk about this. They talk about it. What are you walking? And also really be very critical. If someone starts to email you and starts to say, I'm seeing something that looks amiss, take it seriously. Because we have an uprising of church too. We have other people starting to stand up and say, I've had enough.
Well, and now it just dawned on me, that's how you and I started talking about this show, because a friend of mine is going through that. They are dealing with their home church of 5 generations, closing the books, adding guns to the service, all of this really crazy stuff. And I reached out saying, okay, give me some advice. I've already told her everything that I know. I need someone else that's looking at this. And you chimed in and said, okay, the books were the first thing they closed at their church.
You have to, because I always tell people, if you want to know what somebody really wants to, believes in, find out what they work. If you want to know what they really worship, follow the money. That'll tell you where they really worship. And we saw that when I was with Sojourners. Look at Sojourners 990. They take some money from some pretty hardcore conservative people. In fact, most progressive best-selling authors that you look at follow the funding streams. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to go speak to this conference because I want to do bridge building. Bullshit. They are there because they want to hawk their book, and they have to water down the message. The message is radical enough, has just enough F-bombs in it that it's going to attract the stuff. But it can't be too edgy, because then you can't get invited to the Christian conferences. So there's that, and you know that from doing a book, there's that whole push. These are the people, and this is what someone said to me, is that, as religious satirists, they were like, I knew what to do to sell out. I'd interviewed enough people. I knew the steps to take. I couldn't stomach it.
Right.
A narcissist will do it. They will do whatever, you watch people doing these PR things, you're like, I cannot believe you did that. That's what a narcissist will do. And eventually everybody goes along with it. Like, isn't that edgy? Isn't that great? And once you've taken care of yourself, you might have been attracted to this, and you'll look back and go, nope.
Well, because I think that we, especially if we've been indoctrinated into the church, we see men as natural leaders. And that, I'm not saying that all narcissists are men, but the majority of them are, and especially within the church. But we want someone who's strong. We want someone who has those convictions. And what I'm hearing you say is that a narcissist has no convictions. A narcissist
Mhm.
is the ultimate chameleon, where even their morals will bend in order to achieve what they are doing.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
that's fair. I think the only thing I would counter is that I've encountered a fair number of female victim narcissists who I
I mean, it
wanted
just, I mean,
to benefit. And
yeah,
that's the one that pulls at my heartstrings because they've had a story of legitimate persecution, especially if they're a woman of color. They have been through some hard shit. They have experienced stuff that is really bad. It'll pull at my heartstrings. And it takes me a while to realize they're globally needy. I'm not going to satisfy their needs. They're going to find somebody else to loan them the money. They will find someone else to take care of all their needs. I cannot do this. And then when they get that person to, a position of clergy, that's the person, and you find yourself taking care of the pastor.
Mhm.
You find yourself, the pastor needs money. The pastor needs a place to stay. The pastor needs things. And I'm just saying that is screwed up is beyond belief. The pastor has a bishop or has someone that should have a bishop, a vestry, a board where they should go for their needs, not the congregation.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I have looked to possibly attending another church, I have always wanted to see where the pastor's residence is. That shows me everything that I really need to see.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if and what they're driving. Um, and I mean, I've even gotten arguments with my secular friends of saying, well, that's their job. They deserve to be wealthy. It's like, if you're in the ministry, no, you don't deserve to be wealthy, because we're supposed to be in the ministry to help people, not acquire wealth. So following the money is another really good way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. And it's also just learning to tune into your spidey sense. And what I did is my spidey sense, I always had a really great BS detector, which is why I was a very good satirist. I could always tell something's effed up, which is why my family kind of at this point is best. I chose to go no contact with them after they didn't inform me that my sister had passed away. This tells you that's how narcissistic families work. They will, once you've been banished,
Wow.
oh yeah, but they, and I'm joking about it now because there was like 6 months ago that would have just completely, no, I'd say 6 years ago that would have devastated me. But
Yeah.
I've done enough work and I was like, I'm done with you guys. I mean, there's nothing that you can do. But I also realized the reason I was bringing that case up is that the goal is for you to be able to walk away and just be, I'm okay. I'm not a, I'm not, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling appropriate emotions, but I'm not filled with this torrent of, I want to kill that person. I want to hurt that person. I want
Yeah.
that person to hurt as bad as I hurt. I just don't feel that anymore. Now, there are times that occasionally I'll have an incredibly stressful day and I will snap, but then I will immediately go call the person up and go, I am terribly sorry. I had a really bad day. That was not okay.
We're human.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want people to think that just because you get healed from your trauma, you're going to become this superhuman and ability to handle your emotions every nanosecond. No, you're going to be messy and you're going to screw up no matter what, but you will be able to walk into a situation. Now, I can tell you that's a narcissistic situation that, yeah, 6, 10 years ago, I would have loved that scene. I would have loved to groove with that music. Now I can tell that guy is a predator and I'm not going to, want to be around that person. I don't want that buzz is a fake buzz. It's not a genuine buzz. It's kind of like drinking Diet Coke versus having a really good cane sugar soda. You deserve the good stuff, and you will get the good stuff. But we get so addicted to the Coke crap, the Coke version of Christianity, that we don't want the really good stuff,
Yeah. Well, because
or we
that
don't
makes
even
us
know that it
work.
exists.
It makes us
You,
work. It makes us think. It makes us do things instead of just sit there and absorb. Right.
Yeah, and I think that it's also because of our increased polarization. I want people to be mindful. When you look at
Yeah.
this, it is a systemic issue that involves when anybody gets into a position of power, that's how you can tell who they really are.
Right.
Do they have is there an accountability system around them? Who tells that person that his shit doesn't stink? Is there somebody
Right.
that there has to be? Maybe is there a group of elders, or all the elders yes men and maybe a few women, you know, and then look for the financials. If you get the accountability and the financial system, those two things down, that'll be two good signs that if it's healthy, is it not healthy? Because a healthy church will have an accountability system and their financials will be clear. And an unhealthy system, it's a little bit vague where all the money goes.
Well, and I also think that a narcissist will never truly apologize. So if you're not getting accountability and apologies, then that's also a pretty big red flag.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to echo again my practice of just trying to say no. I mean,
Yeah.
I always did it early. I mean, it's a technique somebody said in a dating relationship is a good thing to do. Just
Yeah.
gently tell the guy, I can't see you tonight. Can I see you tomorrow night? And he maybe, I can't, a normal person would say, I'm sorry, I booked the rest of the week. We'll get together next week.
Yeah.
Or he may get together with you the next day. A narcissist is going to go ballistic because you blew their night.
Yeah.
You
Try to
did
take
not.
control again.
And just because the more and more you see this, the more and more you experience it. I mean, it's why, even though I wrote on Faith and Politics for many years, I'm checking out of the political system right now. I'm just going to sit back and I'm doing the oxygen thing. I'm in a point in our history where I'm putting on my oxygen mask. And
Yeah.
I'm taking care of myself this election cycle. The only piece I'm going to write about it is a piece from my alumni magazine where I'm going to discuss my answer to Roger Williams, reminding everybody of the virtues of church and state. That we should not have evangelicals for Biden or evangelicals for Harris or evangelicals for Trump. We shouldn't have these kinds of faith-based political groups because
Right.
the marriage of faith and politics produces such an extreme level of narcissists. It's like bringing together two forms of kryptonite to form,
Totally.
you
Yeah.
know,
It's
and
the ultimate, it's the powers coming together.
and we have a media that's not going to report on this. The media is not very adept at this. I went ballistic when there was 350 faith leaders the last election signed a document supporting Joe Biden for president. I'm like, you guys, you just did the exact same thing that you criticize Trump supporters for doing. And you can say that one is less odious than the other, but I'm talking the basic principle of faith, politics, and religion need to be kept separate. There's so much narcissistic energy in both of them that when you put them together, it is god awful. And we've seen enough of that instances that we don't need anymore.
Right. Well, Becky, thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour. I know that you and I can talk more, and we probably should schedule a second show to follow up on this because this was great. But any final words, and where can people find you?
People can find me via Instagram or my Facebook author page. I think the final word is just to encourage people to really tune into your gut. We don't trust our gut as women, especially as women. We are told that we're emotional. But just what is your gut telling you?
Crazy.
Tune into that for Christ's sake. Just listen. Your gut my gut never lies. My brain gives me all kind of weird ass stuff sometimes.
There you go.
My heart and my gut, they know what I want, and they will fight with my brain like crazy. And fortunately, once you get into treatment for your trauma, your heart and your brain will be much more in sync than they used to be.
Thank you so much. I'm going to send you backstage and close the show.
Okay, thank you.
Follow Becky on Instagram. Follow her on Facebook. She is a never-ending resource for this type of thing, and I really appreciate her. I think that we fall prey to narcissism because we want to believe in the potential of someone else. We want to believe in the greatness of someone else. But authenticity is what matters. I say it almost every week that a narcissist is never going to be authentic because, like Becky said, they needed to reroute their roles and according to who they're talking to. So look for people whose actions match their words. Look for people who are actually doing the work as opposed to just saying it needs to be done. I am so excited for the show, and I hope that you guys got a lot out of it. I did. I'm going to be thinking about this shit for like days. Sorry, I had to turn on my little remote control. But thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate your input. Patrick, you're always great. Thank you so much, my producer. Next week's show is with Kimberly Ashland, who is a comic and has been shaking up the stage with her irreverence and feisty humor. She was born and raised a child of a Baptist preacher and married for 25 grueling years. She escaped to live the life that she wants. It's going to be a fun show. Don't forget to check out my book. There it is. Oops, let me remove Becky's stuff. Reviews are fabulous. It's doing really well. And I want to know what you think. I want to know what you got out of it. I want to know how it helped you in any way. If you like the show, share and subscribe and all that good stuff. Thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful week. And as always, walk in love. Mwah! See you soon.